Hello, in this video I'm going to cover the RDS blueprint with BoltOps Pro. I'm going to cover specifically MariaDB in this case. The blueprint actually allows you to use deploy MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, but we're going to focus on MariaDB for this video. If you're looking for Aurora, there is also Aurora blueprint, or if you're looking for Aurora serverless, there's also Aurora serverless blueprint. But we're covering the RDS traditional database here. The default database is MySQL, so we're going to have to override some of these parameters, and I'll show you how to do that in this video. This is a note saying that pretty much any of the properties are configurable via parameters, and if you need additional further customization, then it's also configurable via variables. So the blueprint's pretty flexible for your needs. You can configure however you need it. Storage is configured by default. And there's also a DB subnet group that can be created by either providing DB subnet IDs here or DB subnet group name. So if you have like existing DB subnet group name, then you just use that if you want to. That's your preference. Or you could just pass the CloudFormation template, essentially subnet IDs here, and then it's going to create a DB subnet group and manage it for you. Lastly, it talks about optionally creating a Route 53 record and putting that to the DNS endpoint of the RDS database. Because when you spin up an RDS database, it gives you like a random endpoint kind of, and this will just allow it to give you like a prettier name to that endpoint. If you're going to use Route 53 for this, then I recommend using the internal Route 53 records. We're dealing with databases here. Usage is pretty straightforward. You just add the blueprint to your gem file. You configure some config values under RDS here, and you deploy the blueprint. Here's the add step, here's the configure step, and here's the deploy step. I want to spend a little extra time on this part right here, compatible parameters and variables. So each database engine RDS can take different, basically, parameters or properties, okay? You have to make sure that whatever database you're provisioning, the values are compatible. You can't, for instance, use MySQL 8.0 DB parameter group family here with MariaDB. This is not going to work. So this is the table that we put together to kind of save you some time here that shows you compatible values, okay? So you might want to study this table before deploying here, or else the stack will roll back and then you have to kind of do it all over. And databases take about 10 to 15 minutes to deploy, so you definitely want to study this table. We're going to literally just use these values from this table right here once we show you the demo. Here's talking about custom VPCs. You could use, you could provision database onto your own VPC if you want to, if you already have one. You don't have to use, you can use any VPC essentially. I'm actually using the reference architecture VPC for BoltOps Pro, so I'm just going to actually use that VPC. But again, you can use existing VPCs if you need to. It's recommended that you provision database instances onto private data subnets, and that's part of the reference architecture, so I'm actually just use that. Here's a screenshot from that. Security groups. If you have existing security group that you want the database to use, then you could just supply it here. Or if you don't supply the existing security group, then it's going to create a security group and kind of manage it for you. Here's some more information about Route 53 endpoint here. Advanced property customizations. You could use this blueprint to also create replicas off the master. So that's pretty neat. Here are kind of more advanced configurations if you're using DB parameter groups or DB option groups. These require variables and kind of compile down the template. But this is an example for MySQL. If you have, let's say we're using Postgres or MariaDB here, right here, then you need to make sure that the parameters or the option groups specifically apply to that database engine. And here's lastly some considerations when you're launching a database with CloudFormation. I would actually recommend using a setting DB instance identifier just when you're actually done with everything, because with CloudFormation, what it does is it creates a new resources and then will replace the old resources with certain properties. Now with all properties, you literally have to read all the documentation here, and I'll show you which properties will kind of require replacement. That's very important. However, that's kind of easy to forget, especially if you're working with multiple people. So you don't want to accidentally replace your database and literally lose your data, right? So what I will recommend is using setting a DB instance identifier as a guardrail. That will essentially force the stack to roll back immediately, which is prevents you from making that mistake. Okay, that being done, we've covered the README pretty thoroughly. Now we're ready to jump into the demo. To jump into the demo, I just need to grab the line of code I need to add to the Lono project here, the gem file, and that gem line is essentially the same thing as this blueprint because there's a helper method blueprint here that just makes it look prettier. So I'm going to use that. Go ahead and delete that. Go in here and bundle now. And then now we are ready to configure values. Let's go here and you go configure both the values, okay? So development and production at the same time. That configure is basically development, and that configure is production. So what LoNoC does is it compiles down the template and evaluates the template, and then it generates some starter config files just to save you a bunch of time. So here's the first one. And now, because we're using MariaDB and the default is MySQL, we're going to have to actually replace all these values. Let's go check out that compatibility table. That table is very important. Okay, looks like we're going to change the engine to MariaDB, which is just you know, a enhanced version of MySQL that has some optimizations. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do both. I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna just do both at the same time here. So the engine is done now. Okie dokie. And then the engine version. So MariaDB is already on 10. So let's go replace that. Replace that for development and production there. And then the DB parameter group family. And that is actually now part of this resource. See the parameters, the way this blueprint's design is all the parameters group under the resource that it's a property of, essentially. And the parameter family is actually a part of the DB parameter group, and then the CloudFormation template kind of glues all together. So we gotta go down here to replace this one. We don't want MySQL in this case, we want MariaDB. So let's go ahead and grab MariaDB's family, group family, and replace it for both development and production. So that covers all the values. DB3 micro, I believe that's the default value. Yep, that is right here. So we're good. And then let's just review a couple things because we've only covered that compatibility table. But there's some values here. Just put this like this. Development. There is this DB subnet group name. And it says you must set either the DB subnet group or the subnet IDs, depending on whether or not you want the template to manage your DB subnet group name, or if you have existing, basically, DB subnet group. So I'm going to use the existing one off of the reference architecture, the VPC that I've already built here. Go click on outputs, and here's a private DB subnet group name. Right there, DB subnet group there, but here's DB subnet group name. So that's development, and I'm go ahead and also update the VPC because I'm already in the development account here. And update that. The subnet, glad I didn't miss that. So you got to set that to blank string if you're not using it. That's just the way this one's designed. And then I'm going to switch over to the prod account and grab the values that I need. So here's outputs. I guess there we go. Outputs, there we go. So DB subnet group right there for production this time. Okay, go here and blink this out. And then grab VPC ID for production. Okay, I think I'm set with everything now. Let's just put this side by side and just review real quick. Looks good. The username and password, obviously, you might want to change that. I'm just doing a demo here, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And the subnets IDs have been wiped out. That's good. MariaDB, and then different, basically, VPCs there. So now we're ready to launch. Let's go ahead and grab the launch commands, the deploy commands. The first command I'm going to grab with the no wait option because I just want to basically return right away. But the second one, I'm going to actually not include that intentionally. I'm intentionally missing that, copy and paste right there. So then it will kind of pull and kind of wait. So let's go ahead and run the commands now. So that's basically the first command, which deploys the development settings and also into the development account. I'm using a separate AWS account strategy here. So there's a separate development AWS account, and there's a separate production AWS account here. So the first one launched, and then actually the second one I pressed enter right away, so that's why we couldn't see it. Basically, here's the production one, and here there's no wait option, no wait option. So okay, so now it's into a CloudFormation polling, and it's basically gonna wait until the stack is done. Okay, we can verify that the stack has launched here by refreshing here. You can see creating progress for production. Development should show a similar RDS stack here, right there. So there's the RDS one. Good. So everything's deploying now. RDS databases, they do take a little time to create. Typically, I found about 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to pause so y'all don't have to wait. Okay, the database finished completing. It took 11 minutes and 30 seconds here, at least for the production one. Let's go ahead and verify that it finished completing by checking also the console. Let's go look at production. It looks like dev also finished there. So here is production. It is done. That is good. And here is dev, which we just briefly saw there. That's also complete. For good measure, let's go check out the RDS console. There it goes. Once it loads, there it goes. The MariaDB is the engine. That's good. Here's the instance size. You click on the instance right there, and then you can find out more information. What's launched in the development VPC here. Here are the subnets. Here's the subnet group. So that is looking good. Let's go ahead and switch over to production and also just confirm. So here's the database identifier here. Also MariaDB. In the production VPC right there, and the subnets. Okay, so that looks good to me. We are, I think, let's see, CloudFormation. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so let's wrap up here. What we did was we used the RDS blueprint, which can be used to create all these types of different databases, but we use it specifically in this video to create the MariaDB database, which is an enhanced version of MySQL essentially. And the most important part, I think, is actually just focusing on this table right here, making sure you're using compatible parameter values, or else the stack's gonna go back, okay? But that's it. Hopefully you found that helpful. Cheers.